A heavy glass frame shattered against the hardwood floor, sending sharp shards flying past my ankles. My mother-in-law, Samantha, pointed a trembling finger at my face, her voice piercing the tense room. "Look at yourself. Ashley, you smell like dead fish, your hands are rough, and you're dragging my son down." Standing beside her, Ethan, my husband of 6 years, did not say a word. He adjusted the cuff of his expensive suit, looked away, and coldly let her words destroy me. That silent betrayal hurt 1,000 times more than his mother's cruel insults. I looked at the man I had built, whose law school tuition I had paid with every penny from my small food truck. On the night we were supposed to celebrate his dream job at Seattle's top law firm, I was not even invited to his victory dinner. Instead, I stood in my own home, treated like an embarrassing secret. Before my marriage fell apart in the bright lights of a luxury apartment, it began in the freezing darkness of the Elliott Bay docks 6 years ago. At 4:30 in the morning, the Seattle waterfront was black and bone-chilling cold. The icy Pacific wind whipped across the harbor, stinging my face like needles. I pulled my faded beanie tight over my ears and turned the key in my old navy blue food truck. The engine sputtered, groaned, and roared to life, shaking the metal floorboards under my boots. Inside the small kitchen, the air smelled intensely of salty ocean water and raw seafood. My hands were red and deeply cracked from handling cold water and sharp blades 14 hours every day. I dumped a bucket of fresh oysters onto the stainless steel prep table. The sharp metallic clatter echoed inside the metal walls. Every sore muscle protested, but I kept moving. This kitchen on wheels was the engine keeping our lives afloat. 6 years ago, Ethan and I made a solemn promise overlooking the foggy bay. I would put my business administration degree on hold, run the seafood food truck, and pay off his crushing student loans so he could attend the University of Washington School of Law. "Once I pass the bar, Ashley, it will be your turn." Ethan held my rough hands with intense devotion. "I will handle our bills. You will go back to college and build your restaurant chain. We are a team." I believed every word. While Ethan sat in warm university lecture halls studying thick legal textbooks, I stood in the humid heat of the food truck fryer, flipping fish fillets in grease-stained aprons. Every month, transferring my hard-earned cash straight to his tuition account filled me with deep pride. I was investing in our shared future. However, Samantha never saw it that way. Ethan's mother, a retired cashier living off a small pension, visited our rental house every Sunday with a sneer. She exaggeratedly waved her hand in front of her nose the moment I opened the door. "The smell of cheap cod and grease is soaked into the carpets. Ashley," Samantha would say, dropping her heavy purse onto the table. "My Ethan is going to be a respected attorney. How is he supposed to bring colleagues home when his wife smells like a harbor dock?" I always swallowed my pride, pouring her hot tea with a polite smile. "Ethan is working hard, Samantha, and so am I. We are doing this together." "Together?" Samantha would laugh bitterly. "He is building a career. You are just frying fish." Ethan never defended me. He would sit at the table scrolling through legal forums, staying completely silent. When I brought it up later, he just brushed it off. "She's just old-fashioned, Ashley. Don't be so sensitive." I chose to forgive him, believing he was just exhausted from exams. Then came the day that changed everything. A thick white envelope arrived bearing the gold-embossed seal of Cole and Associates, the most prestigious big law firm in downtown Seattle. Ethan tore it open with shaking fingers, his eyes scanning the paper before a massive grin spread across his face. "I got it," Ethan screamed, spinning me around the living room. "Associate position. Starting salary in 6 figures. Ashley, we made it." Tears of pure relief welled in my eyes. All those 4 in the morning wake-ups, freezing ocean winds, and aching joints. It was finally over. We had won. We need to celebrate, I whispered. I'll close the food truck early tonight and make your favorite seafood chowder. Ethan's smile faltered. He cleared his throat and adjusted his collar. Actually, Ashley, my mother is coming over tonight. She already bought champagne to celebrate at our place. That evening, I set the table with our best napkins and cooked for hours. When Samantha arrived, she brought a shiny, gold-bordered invitation card to the Cole and Associates Gala and laid it proudly on the table. I reached for the card, expecting both our names, but my fingers froze. It read, Mr. Ethan Miller and guest. Ethan, I whispered, where is my name? Samantha chimed in with artificial sweetness. Ashley, it's a black tie event. High society people, senior partners, judges. Ethan needs a flawless first impression. You don't own a dress for a place like that, and you would feel completely out of place. I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to tell his mother that his wife, who paid for every credit hour that got him that job, belonged by his side. Ethan avoided my eyes, staring down at his plate. Mom is right, Ash. It's corporate politics. I need to network. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway. It's better if you stay home. The silence became suffocating. The warm food on my plate suddenly smelled sickening. I stood up, my heart pounding against my ribs. I looked down at my hands, rough, calloused, and scarred from 6 years of hard labor in the cold wind. Those hands paid his bills and built his dream. Now, those hands were too embarrassing to be seen in public. I walked to the sink, turned on cold water, and washed dishes in silence while Samantha whispered proudly to her son. Staring at my reflection in the dark glass, I felt the cold, heavy wedding band on my finger. A quiet, terrifying realization washed over me. I was not his partner. I was just the ladder he used to climb to the top, and now he was preparing to kick it away. A month after Ethan joined Cole and Associates, the distance between us turned into a cold, silent abyss. He used his new, 6-figure income to secretly sign a lease on a high-rise luxury apartment downtown. He claimed he needed a quiet space closer to the firm to work late on corporate cases. In reality, he was systematically erasing me from his life. Our modest rental house soon became an empty shell. Ethan spent his nights in his pristine glass tower, leaving me alone in the dark. When he did come home on weekends, he brought an icy, suffocating silence. He stopped touching me. He stopped looking at me. His eyes held a cold detachment that felt like a deliberate punishment. He began picking apart everything about me. He sneered at my plain jeans, criticized my speech, and complained constantly about the faint smell of ocean brine clinging to my skin after a 14-hour shift. You need to change your soap, Ashley, Ethan said one evening, standing 3 feet away in our hallway. He pulled his cashmere sweater over his nose with disgust. That cheap harbor smell gets into everything. It's embarrassing. Every word was a calculated strike designed to make me feel small, dirty, and unworthy. His mother, Samantha, visited often to amplify the damage. She walked around our living room, tapping her fingernails against the furniture, dropping venomous remarks. A real attorney's wife knows how to host dinner parties, Ashley, Samantha sneered, running a gloved finger over the mantelpiece. She wears silk, not grease-stained aprons. Ethan is mingling with partners who own yachts. You are holding him back. Ethan sat nearby, scrolling through his phone, ignoring my pain. His silence was a weapon, punishing me for existing in his polished new world. One rainy Thursday afternoon, I decided to fight back with kindness. I closed the food truck early, spent 2 hours cooking a fresh, hot lunch, and packed it neatly in an insulated bag. I drove to his firm's towering glass skyscraper in downtown Seattle, wanting to surprise him and remind him of the home we built together. The lobby of Cole and Associates was blindingly bright, filled with polished marble, towering palms, and the quiet hum of wealth. I stood near the reception desk in my rain-soaked jacket and sensible boots, holding the warm bag of food. I felt out of place, but I held my head high. Then, the elevator doors chimed and slid open. Ethan walked out wearing a sharp charcoal suit, flanked by two senior associates in tailored blazers. They were laughing together, looking confident and prosperous. Ethan's eyes met mine across the lobby. His smile instantly vanished. A look of sheer panic and intense embarrassment flashed across his face. He quickly whispered something to his colleagues and walked briskly toward me. Before I could speak, he grabbed my elbow with a tight, painful grip and dragged me toward the dimly lit service hallway near the emergency exit stairs. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind us, cutting off the hum of the lobby. "What are you doing here, Ashley?" Ethan hissed under his breath, his eyes darting around the empty hallway as if expecting someone to catch us. "I brought you lunch, Ethan," I said softly, holding up the bag. "You've been working so hard, and I thought—" "Are you insane?" he interrupted, his voice sharp and bitter. He looked at my damp hair and plain coat with humiliation. "Look at you. You can't just show up at my firm looking like this. This isn't the docks." My chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. "Ethan, I'm your wife. Right now, you look like a food delivery driver." Ethan snapped, snatching two $20 bills from his leather wallet and shoving them into my hand. "Take this, go home, and never come to this building again without calling me first." He didn't wait for my response. He turned on his heel, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped back into the bright, carpeted hallway, leaving me standing alone in the cold stairwell. The green bills felt like acid in my palm. The smell of the warm seafood chowder in my bag suddenly made me sick. I stood in the shadows, listening to the muffled sound of his laughter echoing from the lobby as he rejoined his wealthy colleagues. Later that night, I sat alone in our dark living room. Rain beat rhythmically against the window pane. I walked into our bedroom and opened his closet. It was completely empty. Ethan had moved the rest of his clothes, his shoes, and his personal belongings to his luxury apartment while I was out working at the food truck. He hadn't even left a note. I sat on the edge of the cold, stripped mattress. The silence in the house was a loud, painful realization. The cold shoulder, the cruel insults, the secret apartment, and the hidden hallway meeting were not random acts of stress. Ethan was executing a cold strategy. He was isolating me, breaking my spirit, and stripping away my dignity piece by piece. He wanted me to feel so worthless that I would shrink away quietly while he stepped into his bright new life. I looked down at my hands in the dim moonlight. They were rough, calloused, and worn from years of hard work. But for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed of them. Those hands had built a dream. The man wearing the suit was a fraud, but my labor was real. A cold, sharp clarity settled deep in my chest, replacing the suffocating grief. Ethan thought he was erasing a weak, invisible woman. He had no idea that behind the quiet tears, a quiet fire had just been lit. 2 weeks later, an official process server knocked loudly on the window of my food truck during the chaotic lunch rush. The loud thud echoed against the metal walls, cutting through the sizzle of the fryer and the chatter of waiting customers. He handed me a thick, yellow manila envelope stamped with the official seal of King County Superior Court. Inside was a formal petition for dissolution of marriage. Ethan was suing me for divorce. Reading the legal documents felt like getting hit square in the chest with a heavy sledgehammer. Ethan was demanding sole possession of our rental home, claiming he paid the security deposit. Worse, he accused me of severe marital misconduct. The legal filing claimed I had engaged in an improper romantic relationship with Marcus Vance, the owner of the local seafood wholesale market who supplied my food truck. Ethan had taken my quiet suffering and turned it into a disgusting, calculated lie. He was referring to a sweltering afternoon last July when my food truck's commercial freezer suddenly failed. Marcus had immediately driven his own refrigerated delivery truck across town to save $10,000 worth of fresh inventory. I had broken down in tears against the cold metal wall, terrified of going bankrupt and failing to pay Ethan's law school tuition. Marcus had simply handed me a clean shop towel and said, "Breathe, Ashley. It's just fish. We'll save it." Ethan took that moment of human kindness, twisted it, and used it to paint me as a cheating, dishonest wife. He wanted to destroy my reputation in court so he could walk away from our 6-year marriage looking clean, innocent, and victimized. The next morning, Marcus walked up to my food truck holding a copy of the court summons. The crisp sea air smelled of salt and diesel fuel as he stood by the window. His jaw was tight with quiet anger, but his dark eyes were steady and respectful. "I saw my name in your husband's legal filing, Ashley," Marcus said, his voice low, deep, and calm. "I am sorry he dragged me into his mess to hurt you." "I am so sorry, Marcus," I whispered, holding back tears of burning humiliation. "He is trying to make my honesty look dirty." "I helped you because you are an honest, hard-working woman," Marcus replied firmly, resting his calloused hands on the steel counter. "I respected your marriage, even when your husband didn't. I will stand in court as your witness. No anger, no drama, just the plain truth. We won't let him rewrite history." Word spread quickly across the docks. The local fishermen, the dock workers, and the market vendors rallied around me. They brought me old receipts, handwritten ledgers, and carbon copy invoices from the past 6 years. Every dollar I had spent on Ethan's university tuition, his bar exam prep courses, and his expensive suit wardrobe was recorded in those worn paper pages. My community remembered who paid the bills while Ethan sat in air-conditioned classrooms. On Friday afternoon, Samantha marched up to my food truck wearing a bright silk scarf and dark sunglasses. She dropped a heavy silver pen on the stainless steel counter with a sharp clatter and pushed a copy of the divorce agreement toward me. "Sign the papers, Ashley, and stop this ridiculous drama," Samantha demanded, her sharp voice echoing across the pavement for waiting customers to hear. "You are an uneducated fish vendor. You don't fit into Ethan's professional world. You are embarrassing my son by dragging this out." I looked at her trembling hands, her harsh eyes, and her bitter scowl. Suddenly, the fear inside me vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of cold, sharp clarity. "You hate me because I remind you of yourself, Samantha," I said, my voice steady, clear, and ringing across the parking lot. "Your husband abandoned you 30 years ago, leaving you broke, bitter, and angry at the world. You spent your whole life teaching Ethan to be ashamed of hard work so he wouldn't turn out like you. But you didn't raise a successful man. You raised a coward." Samantha's face turned bright red. She gasped, snatched the silver pen off the counter, and stumbled backward, completely speechless. That evening, I stood alone in the center of my small living room. The rental house was dark, silent, and empty. But for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel weak, helpless, or small. I walked over to the large wall mirror in the hallway. I stared at my reflection in the dim light. I saw the dark circles under my eyes, the faint lines on my forehead, and my calloused, scarred hands. But behind the exhaustion, I saw something new, an unshakable, fierce determination. I reached out, grabbed a red marker, and drew a thick, bold line straight through the false accusations on the legal document. I opened a metal lockbox on my desk and pulled out 6 years of bank statements, tuition payment receipts, and tax records. I stopped playing the victim. I stopped crying over a man who viewed my sacrifice as dirt under his shoes. Ethan wanted to use the law to erase me and bury my truth. I was going to use the law to reclaim my name, my money, and my freedom. The fluorescent lights of courtroom 3B at the King County Superior Court buzzed with a dull, incessant hum. The air smelled of stale floor wax, old paper, and nervous sweat. Ethan sat at the petitioner's table in a tailored charcoal suit, his leather briefcase resting neatly beside him. His hired attorney, a sharp man with slicked-back hair, leaned over to whisper in his ear. Ethan smiled, a cold, confident expression of a man who believed he owned the room. I sat at the respondent's table in a plain, navy blue blazer I had bought on sale 3 days ago. Beside me sat my court-appointed legal aid attorney, a quiet woman with sharp eyes named Sarah. In the gallery behind us, the wooden benches were filled with familiar faces, local fishermen, dock workers, and market vendors from the Elliott Bay waterfront. In the back row, sitting quietly in a camel hair coat, was Victoria Cole, the senior partner from Cole and Associates. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, tapped her wooden gavel twice. The sharp crack echoed against the oak-paneled walls. Ethan's attorney stood up first. His voice was smooth, loud, and dramatic. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of a marriage that has collapsed due to the respondent's total refusal to adjust to my client's professional life. Mrs. Miller's contributions were merely ordinary marital support. Furthermore, her improper relationship with a local seafood supplier destroyed my client's trust. We ask the court to award sole possession of the marital home to Mr. Miller and dismiss any claims for financial support." I kept my hands folded on the table. My knuckles were pale, but my heart was steady. Sarah stood up. She did not raise her voice. She placed a heavy stack of certified documents on the podium. "Your Honor, my client is not here to ask for charity. We are here to present financial truth. We will show that Mr. Miller's entire legal education was funded directly by Mrs. Miller's labor, and that the allegations of misconduct are a deliberate fabrication designed to evade financial liability." Sarah called Marcus Vance to the stand first. Marcus walked up calmly, took the oath, and sat in the wooden witness box. Ethan's attorney immediately stepped forward, trying to intimidate him. "Mr. Vance, isn't it true that you were seen alone with Mrs. Miller at her food truck late at night? Isn't it true that you provided her with financial favors?" Marcus looked directly at the attorney, his voice deep and unshakable. "I supplied her food truck with fresh seafood. When her commercial freezer failed last July, I brought my refrigerated truck to save her inventory so she wouldn't lose $10,000. I helped an honest business owner save her livelihood while her husband was away in law school. I respected her marriage. It is a pity her husband did not do the same." A soft murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge leaned forward, making a quick note on her notepad. Then came Ethan's turn to take the stand. He adjusted his silk tie, smoothed his jacket, and put on his practiced, charming smile. His attorney led him through a series of rehearsed questions, painting him as a hard-working young lawyer trapped in a marriage with an unsupportive, bitter woman. Then, Sarah walked toward the witness stand. She pulled a thick white folder from her briefcase. "Mr. Miller," Sarah began, her voice crisp and clear, "you claim that Mrs. Miller's financial contribution was minimal. Can you identify this document?" She handed him a certified bank transfer record. Ethan's eyes scanned the paper, and his charming smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "This is a record of 24 consecutive monthly wire transfers, totaling over $80,000, sent directly from Mrs. Miller's food truck business account to the University of Washington bursar's office," Sarah stated loudly. "Every single dollar of your law school tuition was paid by fish fillets fried at 4 in the morning." Ethan cleared his throat, adjusting his collar. We pooled our resources as a couple." "Is that so?" Sarah pulled out a second document, her eyes fixing sharply on him. Then let us discuss this document. A business loan application for $40,000 taken out 2 years ago. The primary signature on this loan belongs to Ashley Miller, but the IP address used to complete the online application matches your law school library computer. And the funds were transferred directly into a private personal account in your name. Ethan's face went completely pale. Sweat glistened on his forehead under the bright lights. I had power of attorney. She authorized it. She did not, Sarah said coldly. We have an affidavit from the loan officer and a forensic handwriting analysis proving that you forged your wife's signature to access credit, using her business as collateral while she worked 14-hour shifts. Gasps erupted from the gallery. Ethan turned his head toward his attorney, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He looked frantically toward the back row, where Victoria Cole sat. Victoria stood up from her seat in the gallery. She walked down the center aisle, her heels clicking loudly against the hardwood floor. She approached the podium and addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, I am Victoria Cole, senior partner at Cole and Associates. As Mr. Miller's employer, I am bound by legal ethics to inform the court that Mr. Miller submitted a sworn financial disclosure to our firm claiming he had 0 outstanding personal liabilities. The document presented today proves he committed financial fraud and forged legal documents. Victoria turned her head and looked directly at Ethan. Her gaze was as cold as ice. Mr. Miller, your employment with Cole and Associates is terminated immediately. A formal complaint will be filed with the Washington State Bar Association. Ethan slumped back in the witness chair, his face completely drained of color. His expensive suit suddenly looked hollow, like a costume on a mannequin. The judge tapped her gavel firmly. The room fell into absolute silence. The court finds no merit whatsoever in the petitioner's claims of marital misconduct, the judge declared, her voice ringing through the room. The evidence shows a pattern of deception, financial exploitation, and bad faith by Mr. Miller. Under the doctrine of reimbursement alimony, the court orders that the marital residence and all business assets remain solely with Mrs. Ashley Miller. Furthermore, Mr. Miller is ordered to pay 35% of his future income for the next 8 years to reimburse Mrs. Miller for her direct investment in his legal education. The gavel struck the wooden block with a loud, final thud. People in the gallery cheered, clapping and hugging each other. Marcus smiled warmly at me from across the room. I stood up slowly from the table. I did not scream, jump, or cry. I felt a deep, heavy weight lift off my chest, replaced by an overwhelming sense of quiet peace. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sunlight. Ethan rushed out behind me, his tie undone, his hair messy, his hands shaking wildly. Ashley, please. Ethan cried out, his voice cracking with desperation. Look at what they did to me. They ruined my life. I lost everything. You have to talk to Victoria. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. We can fix this. I stopped on the granite steps of the courthouse. I turned around and looked at him. I looked at his pale face, his bloodshot eyes, and his ruined suit. For 6 years, I had believed this man held my entire world in his hands. But standing there in the sunlight, I saw him clearly for the first time. He was small, pathetic, and hollow. I didn't ruin your life, Ethan, I said, my voice quiet, steady, and cold as iron. You built a house out of lies, and it finally collapsed on you. I paid your debts for 6 years. Now you get to pay yours. I turned my back on him, walked down the stone steps, and stepped into the cool Seattle breeze, leaving his desperate cries fading into the noise of the city streets. 3 months after the court verdict, my life began to transform from the ground up. I stopped living in survival mode and began building a future with intention. The court had awarded me sole ownership of the rental house, our business assets, and monthly reimbursement payments from Ethan. I used those resources not to rest, but to rebuild. My first step was a complete shift in my personal mindset and routine. I stopped looking in the mirror with sadness. I cut my long, tired hair into a sharp, modern bob that framed my face. I bought simple, tailored clothes that made me feel strong and confident. I started working out every morning at a local gym near the harbor, letting the physical exertion burn away 6 years of stored stress and grief. For the first time in my adult life, I was taking care of Ashley. Next came my financial and professional reinvention. I took a hard, analytical look at my seafood food truck business. I rebranded it entirely, turning the navy blue truck into a sleek, matte black vehicle named Seattle Seafood Express. I updated the menu, focusing on high-end, fresh coastal dishes like garlic butter lobster rolls and seared ahi tuna tacos. The response from the downtown lunch crowd was overwhelming. Lines stretched down the block every single afternoon. I also kept my oldest promise to myself. I submitted my application to the evening MBA program at the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. Standing on the university campus for my orientation, holding my student ID card, felt surreal. 6 years ago, I stood on those same grounds paying Ethan's tuition. Now, I walked into the crisp sunlit lecture halls to earn my own degree. My days became intense, disciplined, and deeply rewarding. From 5 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, I managed the food truck and coordinated with suppliers. From 6 to 9 in the evening, I sat in air-conditioned classrooms studying corporate finance, supply chain management, and brand strategy. My mind felt alive, sharp, and hungry for knowledge. During this intense period of growth, Marcus Vance remained a steady, quiet presence in my life. He did not rush me or demand my attention. Every Tuesday morning, when his delivery truck arrived at the docks, he unloaded fresh crates of oysters and salmon with quiet efficiency. One crisp autumn morning, as the smell of roasted coffee beans and salty sea air filled the harbor, Marcus handed me a hot cup of black coffee. "You look different, Ashley," Marcus said, leaning against the side of the truck, his dark eyes warm and respectful. "Not just the hair or the new truck. You look like a woman who owns her own sky." I smiled, taking a sip of the warm coffee. "I stopped waiting for someone else to build my roof, Marcus." "Good," he replied softly, "because you build a damn good roof. Just remember, even strong builders don't have to carry every beam alone." His words held no pressure, only genuine respect. I felt a quiet warmth in my chest, realizing that for the first time, I was forming a relationship based on mutual strength rather than desperate need. While my world expanded, Ethan's world shrank to the bone. Because of his conviction for financial fraud and ethics violations, the State Bar Association suspended his legal license. No law firm in Seattle would touch his resume. To pay his court-ordered reimbursement debt to me and cover his basic living expenses, Ethan was forced to take a job as a paralegal clerk at a small, low-cost traffic law office. His 6-figure lifestyle vanished, replaced by a cramped studio apartment and endless stacks of paperwork. One evening, as I walked out of the university library carrying a heavy armful of finance textbooks, a figure stepped out from the shadows near the brick courtyard. It was Samantha. She looked smaller, frail, and worn down. Her bright silk scarves were gone, replaced by a faded trench coat. She clutched a worn handbag against her chest, her eyes wide and anxious. "Ashley," Samantha called out, her voice thin and trembling. She stepped closer, looking at my tailored coat, my polished boots, and the heavy university textbooks in my arms. "Please, you have to talk to the judge. Or call Victoria Cole. Ethan is working 18 hours a day just to pay you." He is losing his mind. He is my only son. I stopped on the brick pathway. The cool evening breeze rustled the golden oak leaves around us. I looked at the woman who had spent 6 years trying to make me feel small, dirty, and worthless. I felt no anger toward her. I felt no urge to yell or gloat. I felt only a profound, quiet detachment. "Samantha," I said softly, my voice calm and clear. "When Ethan was struggling in law school, I worked 14 hours a day in the freezing cold to support him. You told me then that hard work builds character. Now, Ethan is working to pay his debts. He is finally learning the lesson you forgot to teach him." Samantha opened her mouth to argue, her lips trembling, but no words came out. "I wish you both well," I added politely, adjusting the books in my arms. "But my life is moving forward now." I turned and walked toward my car under the warm glow of the campus streetlights. My boots clicked firmly on the pavement, marking every steady, confident step into my new life. A year after the court verdict, the summer sun hung low over Elliott Bay, painting the sky in brilliant shades of amber, gold, and deep violet. The calm water reflected the city skyline like a vast, shimmering mirror. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, the golden hour in Seattle. The air was crisp and warm, carrying the sweet scent of roasted coffee beans, blooming lavender, and the clean, salty breeze blowing off the Pacific Ocean. I stood on the outdoor wooden deck of Ashley's Coastal Kitchen, my newly opened flagship restaurant located right on Pier 57. The rustic cedar beams, warm hanging string lights, and floor-to-ceiling glass windows created an atmosphere of effortless elegance. Behind me, the spacious dining room hummed with the joyful chatter of guests, the soft clinking of wine glasses, and the mouth-watering sizzle of fresh seafood cooking on open wood-fired grills. This restaurant was no longer just a business enterprise. It was the physical manifestation of my entire journey. The small navy blue food truck, where I had bled, sweated, and wept for 6 grueling years, was now permanently installed in the outdoor courtyard, beautifully converted into an artisanal oyster bar. It served as a proud monument to where I started, reminding me every single day of my resilience and strength. I wore a tailored cream-colored linen dress that fell softly past my knees. My hair was styled in a sleek, chin-length bob that caught the golden sunlight. My skin was glowing, healthy, and radiant. Looking down at my hands resting on the polished wooden railing, I saw the faint, quiet scars of hard labor, but they no longer looked rough or shameful to me. They looked like medals of honor earned in battle. Behind me, the heavy glass doors slid open with a soft, smooth sound. A crowd of loved ones poured onto the deck to celebrate the grand opening. Marcus walked out first, carrying a silver tray of chilled champagne flutes. He wore a sharp navy blazer over a crisp white shirt, his tall frame relaxed, strong, and confident. Beside him were the local fishermen, the dock workers, and the market vendors who had stood by my side when I had nothing. Victoria Cole arrived shortly after, stepping onto the deck with a warm, genuine smile, holding a large bouquet of fresh white lilies. Marcus walked up to me, handing me a glass of golden, bubbling champagne. His dark eyes held a deep, quiet admiration that needed no spoken words. To the woman who turned a crushing storm into a kingdom, Marcus said softly, his voice rich, warm, and steady. "To build something that lasts," I replied, clinking my glass gently against his. As we laughed and toasted with our friends, my eyes briefly caught a familiar movement down on the public pier below the restaurant. Walking slowly along the wooden boardwalk was Ethan. He wore a faded, oversized suit jacket and carried a battered leather briefcase. He looked thin, tired, and thoroughly defeated. His shoulders slouched as he walked toward the bus stop after a long, exhausting day of filing court paperwork at his low-level paralegal job. He stopped for a fraction of a second, looking up at the glowing, warm lights of my restaurant. He saw me standing on the elevated deck, surrounded by success, genuine laughter, and real love. A look of profound, crushing regret washed over his pale face. He stood there frozen in the shadows, looking like a ghost from a past life. A year ago, seeing him might have stirred a terrifying wave of bitterness, anger, or deep pain in my chest. But standing there in the warm evening light, I felt absolute stillness. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I did not feel hatred. I did not feel vengeance. I felt a complete, profound indifference. Ethan was no longer my villain. He was simply a stranger who had lost his way. He had chosen the hollow, artificial pursuit of status, while I had chosen the hard, honest work of building my own soul. I looked at him for one brief second, offered a quiet, polite nod of acknowledgement, and turned my gaze back toward the vast, open ocean. Marcus stepped up beside me at the wooden railing, his shoulder gently brushing against mine. He did not try to hold me back or claim my victory as his own. He simply stood beside me as an equal, sharing the quiet beauty of the evening. "It's a beautiful sunset, Ashley," Marcus murmured softly, looking out at the endless horizon. "It really is," I whispered, taking a deep, satisfying breath of the crisp sea air. The golden sunlight washed over my face, warming my skin. The gentle breeze swept through my hair, carrying away the last lingering ashes of my painful past. I raised my champagne glass toward the horizon, feeling the cool crystal against my fingertips and the steady, unshakable pulse of life in my veins. I had survived the cold, freezing darkness of the Elliott Bay docks. I had walked through the fire of betrayal, deceit, and emotional abuse. I had stood up in a court of law and reclaimed my name, my money, and my dignity. I had stopped asking for permission to exist, and I had built my own sky. Standing on my deck, surrounded by the people who truly valued my worth, I smiled, a slow, serene, and fiercely proud smile. I was no longer an invisible wife, a victim, or merely a survivor. I was free, independent, and unshakable. And as the sun dipped below the Pacific horizon, lighting the sky in a blaze of endless gold, I knew that my life was finally, truly beginning. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.